when you write something in a language, the language encapsulates the culture of the people. Jews and Christians have been polar opposites. From our idea of what Mashiach is, to our idea of what salvation is, to the concept of heaven and hell.
What is this the foreshadowing of? I have the revelation, but there was a foreshadowing. And if I have both the foreshadowing and the revelation, I have proper context to then look through the lens of the world around me. After that, the very next thing that's discussed is now the children of Israel are following God, and they've been out of, they've been delivered and they're out of Egypt, but they got some issues because there's some mindsets. And the first thing they had to deal with was their own preferences. And then they had to deal with the Rev Rav, the mixed multitude. Their own,
I think we should refer to as outside influence, because that's based off of coming out of Mitzrayim.
Exactly. Right. So they came with their own, they formed preferences while in captivity. And and God deals with that first in anger, because there's fire amongst the people, and Moshe prays, and that's resolved. And they're like, okay, now let's move forward. But then a little bit further down the road, now the rabble, the mixed multitude, the people that were with them, now they start complaining about how good the food was in Egypt while they're eating manna from heaven. Of course.
Let's pause there for 1 second, because that's an interesting problem. From a rabbi position, from a pastor position, we know that we're to live and do and minister in a way that casts a broad net.
Right.
We'll take anybody. You don't have to get cleaned up before you come in.
No.
We'll take anybody, but yet it produces a problem.
Absolutely.
Because anybody showed up.
Right.
And anybody started some problems in the camp.
Exactly.
When we're talking about
the problems were severe.
Yeah. And so that's kind of keep going, but that's a tough situation. Because Moshe, like Abraham, we know that Abraham would sit outside his tent in the cool of the day, in the heat of the day, and basically evangelize. He was the first monotheistic, and he would evangelize the people that went by, telling them about his God. We know that when we left Egypt, when we left Mitzrayim, we took the Rev Rav, which means mixed multitude. Rev is the Hebrew word for evening. Rav is the Hebrew word for great. Evening being part light, part dark, and it was quite literally that way with that particular congregation. That's when the golden calf was created. And so you're doing what you know to do, that you were to be a light to the nations. So therefore you let everyone in, but now everyone came in. And as one Christian pastor said, the bigger the light, the bigger the bugs. We only see that in Christianity, though. The what I call the crazes, and that's probably not right, but I've worked for top tier organizations, and in that process, I have met Elvis, Elijah, Elisha, and at the last conference, Jesus was there. And by that, I mean it was literally a white guy in a robe that darkened his face and wore a crown of thorns.
Wow.
That showed up at the meeting. So you get some pretty wild people that show up, and that's benign. In that, that's people might need a little bit of help. But then you have other people that show up to do one thing and one thing only, and that is make sure you don't succeed, to create strife, which is what we actually have. That starts taking. I'm gonna let you continue on, but that's exactly what shows up is strife. I don't believe the way you believe. We could have done better in Egypt. In Egypt, we had, what do we have? Fish.
Right. We have
leeks,
free fish, leeks, onions, garlic. This sounds like an amazing recipe for them to come up to.
Yeah.
I'm like, that does sound delicious.
And they got it for free.
Right. So here they are complaining because they've gotten acculturated to these systems that supported their exploitation. Right. And they're complaining about the taste of freedom, the taste of deliverance, or the fact that it doesn't have a taste that they can appreciate. Because they're like, we almost have no taste now because we've been eating this manna for so long. And it's, and the Bible says that it looked like coriander seed, and they would ground it up in a mortar and pestle, or Torah. And the Bible agreed that it would look like coriander seed. They would ground it up in a mortar and pestle, and they would make a cake out of it, or a loaf of bread. They would bake it and make a loaf, and then they would consume that.
And it tasted like
bread
with oil.
Yeah, bread with oil. Yeah. And so they're complaining about this food that they're getting from on high because it don't taste like the free food that they used to get in slavery.
Yeah.
God is like, lost your rabbit mind.
Yeah.
And Moshe is like, why did you put the burden of these people on me? He is so frustrated in this moment that for just a moment, he loses sight. He gets distracted. He gets off balance, off kilter with his perspective, because now he's like, is this how you going to treat me?
The most humble man in existence.
Exactly. The most humble man in existence at the time. He's like, if this is how you going to treat me, just kill me now.
Yeah.
But if I found any favor, could you fix this? It's crazy. How can I carry the weight of this burden? Right. So, of course, God has a solution. The Sanhedrin, the Council of 70 Elders.
Hold on. I want to interrupt you. And the reason being so keep where you're at, because before that, something is coming into play that gets missed right here. Yeah. So okay, here's what we know is happening, right? Israel's starting to run their mouth.
Right.
Moses is getting a little sideways, and a little bit, even Miriam and Aaron.
Right. Because they're about to have.
Sideways. Yeah, so that's why I will point out. So there's a concept, and let's see if you can define this concept. Lashon hara. Do you remember?
I should, because you said it so many times.
Like a million times.
Right.
I'll make it 1,000,001. Lashon hara is Hebrew for evil speech.
Egypt. Yes. And we just talked about. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
And so do you remember what the byproduct of evil speech was? Okay. So that's why I wanted to stop down, because it doesn't even call it out, but it happens here. If you look at, this is Numbers chapter 8, verse 5, where they are installing the Levites. Go ahead.
What is it? That's the skin disease.
Sarat.
Yes.
Translated leprosy.
Yes.
So if you look at the purification rites of the Levites, that, by the way, we went all around the world and came back to the rest of the inauguration of the tabernacle.
Right.
Their purification. Let me see if I can find
Looks
it.
very
This
similar.
is what you must do to them to purify them. Sprinkle them with purification water. What does yours say? Numbers 8, verse 7. In the English translation, Christian translation, I don't know what to call it.
Thus you shall do to them to cleanse them. Sprinkle water of purification.
Okay, this is not the water from the laver. This is red cow. This is red heifer water from the ashes. So this is the purification water, which was the antidote for touching the dead, the antidote for sarat, leprosy. So it doesn't mention that here, but it just shows that they have to do this remedy for lashon hara. Before lashon hara takes place, by the way, this is part of their installation rites. So purify them. This is what you must do to purify them. Sprinkle them with purification water. Have them shave all their skin with a razor. They must purify themselves, and their clothing is being immersed. We actually read it that they're wearing the clothing when the clothing's immersed. So a mikvah, which is also part of sarat remedy. So I wanted to point that out, because as they're getting mouthy, the prescription for it has already been filled and is sitting there waiting for them. Yeah. It's like the Lord knew what was about to happen.
Yeah, let them get them right, because they're about to mess up.
But think about Israel didn't go through these purification rites.
The Levites.
The Levites did.
Yes.
The Levites. So it's almost like getting snake venom before the snake bites you.
But his sister didn't.
Yeah. Aaron's. Yeah.
So Miriam.
But see, this isn't Aaron here. This is the Levites.
Right.
So anyways, go ahead. But yeah.
So here's that whole situation happening, and it's all, now once again, God is rightfully and righteously angry.
Yeah.
He's said, okay, bring these 70 down here. I'm going to take a portion of the spirit that I placed on you, and I'm going to put it on them, and they're going to help you carry the burden. Which is phenomenal,
by the way. I'm going to take a portion of the spirit that is on Moshe, not the Holy Spirit, not the Ruach HaKodesh. And that's that thing that we've done this in Torah study, where I've said this many times. When you talk about Moshe, and when you talk about Adam or Adam, you're barely talking about
a human.
A human. You're barely talking about a human. Now, obviously, in the case of Moshe, born human, Adam was both male and female during that time, and man and woman came from him. So he's different biologically, however you want to look at it. And the very life that came into him was the breath of God, which is not unlike the fire that inaugurates the altar. Right. It's different in that first go-around. When we talk about the Spirit falling on, the Moshe Spirit being put on them, they prophesy. It affects them. That first iteration of something tends to be different, just like in the Brit Hadashah, when the Holy Spirit came to earth, there was a sound like a mighty rushing wind. In any of these Holy Ghost laying on of hands, I've not seen tongues of fire resting on people. It's been different. Right. So that immediate thing is a bit different than how it plays out. But Moshe he's different. So to say the spirit of Moshe, a portion of them was put on him, we don't exactly know what that means. We know that it was amazing because they started prophesying, but go ahead. And 2 of them wasn't even there, by the way.
Right, because they were hanging out in town. Yeah. They didn't want to come.
Yeah.
And the spirit of Moshe was still on them, and they were prophesying. Yep. Joshua was like, wait, hold up. Time out. They ain't even over here. They don't allow him. Moshe's like, no. I want all of Israel to be prophesying, but whatever. We'll work that out later. He's like, don't even be don't be jealous for my sake. Account. Yeah. Don't worry about it. I'm not worried about that. Yeah. Don't you worry about it. Yeah. Which is different from the kind of response that we see in churches and amongst church leadership when stuff happens outside of the context.
Yeah, he was very non-competitive in that, for sure.
Non-competitive, truly humble. And
he begged for the help.
Right. He's like, I don't care where they're at as long as they're going to help.
You can't beg for the help and then get upset because, for them to help you the way that it needs to happen, they have to have a portion of you to be able to accomplish that.
Right. So that, at the end of the day, that's 70. I thought it was going to be just 68 and that showed up, but it turned out it's still going to be the 70. I'll take them.
So to clarify on this, if you missed so when the Lord puts a portion of Moshe's spirit on these people, they prophesied. 2 of them, who my scripture says registered for that event, for that conference, I guess. I don't know, the Assemblies Elders Conference, but they weren't at the conference. They were still in the camp, and that portion of the spirit of Moshe was still put on them, so they prophesied where they were at. Some of the young people were like, hey, something's not right here. Went and saw Joshua. Mm-hmm. Joshua told Moshe. Moshe says, I'm good. Right. He says, I would to God that all of the Lord's people prophesied. Right. So, yeah.
And so it was just, that moment happens. The next thing that God addresses, of course, is that now he's having this conversation with Moshe, and he's like, did you forget that my arms ain't too short? Yeah. I can handle all of these issues that you have. Yeah. Kind of reminding Moses, like, we've been rocking together for a while. We've been through some things. What are you okay?
It's really surprising that Moshe would question that at this point. Right. After the Red Sea being parted, manna coming from heaven, the cloud itself, the fire itself, the fire consuming the altar, the fire taking out 2 of his brother's sons. Right. At delivering them from Mitzrayim, doing everything that happened in Egypt. You kind of see there's a scenario that this mouthiness got into the camp and that it spread all the way. Moshe, in my mind's eye, was exhausted. That's the way I see it. I've been serving these people.
That's what it sounds like.
It sounds like fatigue, frustration. Right. Man, I've been carrying. I am absolutely worn out. I can't do that. It's too much for me. So, but that's still a bit out of Moshe's character, that he would become that frustrated. So lashon hara. Lashon hara is a number of things. Now, what's funny is with this. I'm sorry. I gotta wait till you get to Miriam and Aaron.
Okay, so to get there, of course, in the process of God reminding Moshe that his arms were indeed long enough, he sends several feet of quail. Throughout the camp of the children of Israel. And it's so much that they're gathering it for days, and then they start to consume it. And God is so angry that in the process, while they consume it, he punishes them.
Well,
while
he
they're
gives them
chewing.
the warning. Yeah, but he even gives them the warning because of them. God gives a provision.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Mitzrayim, Egypt here. You have Israel here. The Lord tells them from here, I'm taking you to the promised land, and it's flowing with milk and honey. But we got to go through the wilderness first. You guys aren't ready to see these battles. I've got to get you there. And it's kind of like the promise of heaven. I don't know what they thought of about the promised land at this point. You don't hear a lot of, well, we can't wait till we get there. There's no big mantra, promised land or bust, kind of a thing. They're complaining the whole way. So it's kind of like us where we're picked out of obscurity. We're picked up out of the world. We're picked up, in my case, right in the middle of my sin. I'm going to take you somewhere, but I don't know the value of the place that I'm going to. So I guess in one context, I'm trying to be empathetic in so much of Israel, of understanding that we probably do this all the time. It is my point. So I have ideas, I have hopes, hardships coming up, and I don't even know what's at the end of this promise. And so that's where they're at. They knew what was back there. But what he is telling them the whole way, he is so, using other scriptures, my thoughts for you are good.
Right.
He has blessing for them that doesn't add sorrow. You could say they were blessed in Egypt, but it came with a lot of sorrow. They get out here, they don't remember the sorrow. They remember the good food they were getting that they didn't have to pay for, but they didn't have the perseverance we were talking about to say, you know what, let's go through what we're going to go through. We'll get to the promised land, and then we'll have fish and leeks, but it won't add any sorrow to it. Exactly. It'll be our land and our thing. So this attitude is seeping in from the ground up.
And it's problematic. So at one point, the guy's like, "Oh, I'm gonna feed them all right.
Yeah,
they're gonna have more than enough meat. Yeah. It's gonna be coming out of the nostrils. They ain't gonna."
My dad did this to me one time. I got caught chewing tobacco in the horse barn, and it was a brown mule. And so he went to the store, and I kid you not, a brown paper bag this tall for tobacco. He said, "You're gonna chew that tobacco till you're sick." Well, it's what the Lord says. You're going to eat quail till it's coming out of your nostrils, is what he says, which quite literally means if you're eating that much of something, you're reeking like it. That's all you can smell. That's all till it's nasty.
He's like, you're going to eat it for a month.
Yeah.
Get ready.
Yeah. So he's punished him. Oh, you want to eat some quail? I'll give you some quail to eat now. Right. That's what but see, with my dad, I thought chewing tobacco was being a man, so I threw up and then kept chewing the tobacco.
Well, apparently.
So I'm going to give you more than you can handle.
Right.
Yeah.
God was good and through with them. So anyway, they finally survived that experience, and God gets them that tune up that they needed, so they get past that. And now here's Aaron and his sister having a conversation about
this is disheartening.
Moshe, right? This is all family at this point. This is
Miriam's
the
a brother. She's highly esteemed.
Right. This is the brother and the sister, the same
Aaron's
sister
the high priest
that followed him as a baby in a reed boat to making sure that he made it to safety, that saw the hand of God on him from the very beginning. And now she's talking disrespectfully.
He's being betrayed by the people dearest to him.
Yeah, dearest
over
and
his
closest.
wife, by the way.
Right. Like he had a choice who he was going to marry out in the wilderness anyway. But I'm like, and then you mad because she's a Cushite? Like, she's a Midianite. Her father is a Midianite, but Midianites were Cushites. They were
she
black
wasn't one
people
of us.
from Africa.
So we got a little racism going on here.
Right. So you're going to tripping on the ethnicity.
And by the way, the Jews back then were much darker than the Jews of
They
today.
look
these were
closer
Middle
to the
Easterners.
Middle Eastern brothers.
This is quite literally the pot calling the kettle black.
Right.
So I don't know if that was appropriate or not.
Right. But no, because it's, the reality is it's true.
But I know in Africa there's racism within the context of shades.
Right.
And that's
colorism
that's
is what we call it. But so basically that's what it was. And so now she's tripping on his wife, and they got all this stuff that they gonna have to say. Like, and God calls the three of them to the tent of meeting. Yeah. And it was just interesting because it doesn't say he sent this person to tell them or nothing. It says God called the three of them to the 10th of
This
meeting.
is Daddy saying, I want all y'all in the living room right now.
Exactly. Yeah. This is like getting called to the principal's office by name. All right.
Yeah.
if that's ever happened to you, I had some moments. I can tell you, it's
God
not
looking
good.
very humanly though, because this is not God on Sinai with the trumpets blasting and the earth shaking and smoke billowing. This is him looking quite human, actually.
Right, like the tap on the shoulder. Come here. Let me talk to you for a minute.
Set you down for a minute. Yep.
And I'm like, ooh, when it said, and he called the three of them to the tent of meeting, I was like, this feels very much like a displeased father.
Yeah.
Very much. Everything about this, the intentionality of just those three, the location, the intimacy, all of that.
It speaks of the love too, I think, though.
Well, right, because he had this conversation
because only a loving father's going to do it. Because he could have just he's wiped out. He just got done wiping out some people that ticked him off.
Right.
That did it the wrong way. That did, started running their mouths. But with these three, he's playing the harmonizer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he calls them in. He, said he reminds Miriam and Aaron, when I establish a prophet amongst you, I reveal.
Is that what yours says? When I establish a prophet?
No, I'm just paraphrasing.
Okay.
But when I establish a prophet amongst you, I give revelation to them through dreams and visions.
Yeah.
That is not how I interact with your brother. I talk to him directly and in plain speech. This is me and him. He knows, he has seen the form of God.
Yeah, he sees my form. That's right.
Okay, y'all ain't on the same level.
Yeah.
So you can't have the same level of expectation about him, because I don't. Just so you know, I treat him different.
Yeah. You
should be able to see that I treat him different. So because you've forgotten.
They just gave all the firstborn rules on this.
Right.
That because he destroyed the firstborn in Mitzrayim, then I'm going to take the firstborn of Israel as my own. I can't do that because of the golden calf. So the Levites are going to be in their place to be the firstborn. Well, who are they dealing with here? Moshe's the firstborn of the Lord.
Exactly.
So they should already know that's not permitted.
Exactly. But they, his own kin. It'd be your own people. Every time. It'd be your own people. Yeah. All right. So his own kin get beside themselves, and God is in his correction strikes Miriam with leprosy.
Yeah.
Aaron is like, interestingly, because of course, as you reminded me, he's already gone through the purification process. Because I was wondering, why wasn't Aaron struck with leprosy?
With the leprosy.
He went through the process. Miriam did not.
Correct.
Got you. Yeah. That literally, I was asking my wife in the car on the way over here, why didn't Aaron? Because they were both in the conversation.
Yeah.
But now I know. Thank you for clearing that up for me. So, and Aaron's like, you can't let this happen to sis. Come on now.
Yeah.
And Moshe's like,
this is such a family conversation.
Yes.
Though.
It's like sitting in the living room and listening to a family hash out their stuff together. And
my kids would navigate with me or negotiate with me. I'd start with 20 swats. They'd usually talk me down to about 10. Right.
Well, what if, but so literally Moshe's like, look, please, Lord, heal her. And God's like, no, if her father spat in her face, she would be unclean for 7 days. Yeah. She would have to be outside the camp. Send her out there for 7 days, and then you can release her to come back.
Yep. Back. And during that time, and this is what gets me, the cloud doesn't lift. Any other time, it's the cloud lifts, they go, the clouds there, they stay. Did I get that? Yeah. And on this one, everything is paused till she's able to rejoin the camp.
Right.
So where she's unclean outside the camp, even though the Lord is rebuking her and punishing her, nothing moves forward until she's back in the camp. She's not expendable on that. And so to me, that's where I said, this is one of the most familial stories between God and his people that I've ever seen. Some of the people are prepared ahead of time for what's about to happen. But I want to touch on, so they got Sarat, translated leprosy, as a byproduct of lashon, hara. In the first case where it was so bad, they were taken out by fire. That's purification.
Right.
When you see that, these are people that would not survive the purification process no other way. We don't know if it's, and I'm really reading into this, but we don't know that the Lord didn't put leprosy on them and that they internally combusted afterwards. And the reason being is in later times, traditionally, this leprosy, not leprosy as we know it now, this hara, was we were taught it as a loving problem. Just like how familiar this is. If you're walking with the Lord and you're that righteous in these days, a little bit of your mouth getting out of line, you're hara. You're now metzora. You have leprosy. And so the rabbis taught this as it was such a graceful act because it was the opportunity to say, yeah, my mouth's getting out of control. I need to fix this. But what it was also saying was the Lord saying, I see you as a righteous one, a tzaddikim. Tzaddikims are not permitted to behave that way. So you can survive just as Yeshua, where it was through affliction or through suffering, he was made perfect. There's a certain amount of righteousness that enables you to handle a certain type of suffering. And so in this case, she's outside of the camp. She gets to come back in. Lashon hara, evil speech, is anything from gossip to slander's the extreme. That's the fire cases. Bearing false witness and slander, which is kind of the same thing, that's just not permitted. Not permitted. But complaining and gossiping is what I was taught, lashon hara. You're not allowed, even with my rabbi. It's funny because sometimes with many rabbi, I'm not committing lashon hara, but you need to know this, kind of thing. Because it's real tricky if you're a leader and there's a bad employee and you've got to communicate some things. You've got to protect your heart in this. You are not permitted to speak evil about anyone or anything. And that's another thing. If I look at, if we kind of got on this theme of kind of comparing Christianity and Judaism, I don't see that on that side. I mean, the malice on one side for someone you disagree with blows my mind. On the Christian side of it, the bearing false witness blows my mind. Rabbis are not a true rabbi can do that. Yeah, exactly. But it also governs. This is a high standard to live up to. And I'm not going to say I do not commit lashon hara because that would be an absolute lie. Because if I got into Jewish law on exactly what it is, but what's funny is in the Talmud, the rabbis say Mashiach, he'll be permitted to speak lashon hara. He'll have to. The job requires it. He'll have to say what's true and what's false. Right. And if it hurts someone's feelings, if it makes someone look bad, that's the way it is. He has the authority to do that. But that's how high of a situation. So underneath Mashiach, we're told, but you don't do that. You are not allowed to paint anybody in bad light, no matter what. And so the deal is, if you're not really walking with the Lord, it doesn't, like, first of all, the rabbis are very clear to say Sarat doesn't exist today. They're because the temple is no more. These dynamics are no more. But it was reserved for the ones the Lord favored or deemed as righteous ones before him. The ones that were given the power to be the sons of God in New Testament terminology. And I think we've covered everything. Passover, real quick. So in this second Passover was introduced. And the reason why I want to touch on Passover a little bit, because this whole thing starts with the kindling of the light. What's the term? The menorah. Causing the light to ascend, to be literally. In Passover, the traditional way of removing chametz from your house, chametz being leaven, you're to get all the leaven out of your house, and we do that. And but, Elaine, are you listening? But when you do that, it's supposed to be you checking the leaven in yourself. You're to use one candle and one feather, and you use one candle because it is not your job to remove the leaven from everyone else. You remove the leaven for yourself. Some rabbis actually teach when you're done, you destroy that candle. You are not to look for leaven again. And so there's a couple of lessons we're taught in that. One is, I've already said, the leaven of other people. When you get consumed with how righteous you are and you start applying that fire to someone else or that light to someone else, not permitted. The lashon hara is a byproduct of that. You don't do that. The candle is destroyed because once you've done all you can do, that's it. Don't keep going. That's it. And what that means is, don't beat yourself up. It is the best I can come up with. You've done what you can to get rid of the puffness that's inside, the haughtiness that's inside of you, the arrogance that's inside of you. Don't destroy yourself in the process is a better way of saying that. You can't get in a place where you start to hate yourself because of your own unrighteousness. And so in dealing with light, understanding that it's a heck of a force in scriptural terms. And like I said, 2 people it killed in the inauguration of the tabernacle, Nadav and Abihu. The fire killed another person. We have the fire that comes down that consumes the altar. This flame, this fire, this light of the Lord, even though it's designed for such holy purposes, if used improperly, can accomplish quite the opposite. So we're taught a pretty hard lesson, even on our approach on removing ourselves, that never get into a place where, matter of fact, we're told you can use a candle, you don't use a torch. You don't do it in the daylight. You're not supposed to use sunlight to do it. It's a very limited approach to removing this, but it's designed to protect us.